listening to Resist and Restore, a podcast from the Circle of Hope Pastors where we're extending the table of our dialogue. I'm Johnny Rashid.
I'm Rachel Sensenig.
I'm Julie Hoke.
And I'm Ben White.
I'm excited about Season 2. This is our second episode for Season 2. Lots of cool things are happening. We're bringing voices from our community and adjacent communities to you because we want to show you who we're connected to, and we hope that our guests and our friends bless you too. Today we have Shane Claiborne on the show. We had a great conversation about Christian nationalism, so I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. But to begin, we want to talk about police violence and the tension that we feel as we keep seeing it, as we also try to hold on to our hope. On Sunday was the first outdoor meeting in person that my congregation had that I led. And we greeted them in the farm, and the morning sun's out. It's great. There's chickens, there's bees for some reason. And
I love that there's a farm in Kensington too.
Isn't that great?
It was a farm. He said a farm. That doesn't sound like him, but it's a farm and it's in Kensington.
And very glad for those bees, Johnny.
Yeah, I'm pro bee. I'm very pro bee. They were right behind me though, so I was kept looking to see if they would.
They made you nervous.
You were also anti-bee.
Well, I mean,
there's that tension again. That's what we're talking about. Pro and anti-bee. Pro-police and anti-police here, right?
And I told them, it's so good to be together because I need you and I need this community to help me endure because it happened again. And this time it was Dante Wright in Minneapolis getting killed at a routine traffic stop. We had Derek Chauvin's trial happening at the time, and we now know the verdict of that. We'll get to that in a moment. And then, between the time I wrote my talk and then gave it, there was another one, a 13-year-old boy, Adam Toledo, who was killed in Chicago. And
with his hands up.
With his hands up. So, I don't. There's only so much despair you can hold, you know. Mm-hmm. And one thing I said is I'm tired of giving messages about this. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I don't want you to feel me or feel for them. I want this to change. We need justice, you know. I want a revolution. I want the kingdom of God to be here now, you know.
I really appreciated when you were saying that, Johnny, because it was just so vulnerable to just say I'm tired of this, you know. I don't want to have to do this anymore. I really felt you. I mean, I didn't experience it in the farm. You gave a similar message at our at-home Sunday meeting, and you had recorded it, and I was feeling you through the recording.
Charles, I guess I said his name. I'm not going to say his full name now, but he's my friend, so it's hard for me to, make him anonymous. He's a black guy.
I don't think it would matter.
No, I know. Yeah. He's a black guy who grew up in North Philly, and we've been working together for a long time. Sweet, sweet person. He shared something in Talkback because he feels it in his body, and he said, my body holds the pain, but if I don't have hope and I don't have action, then my soul will be corroded. It's not just a container for pain.
He said eroded. Corroded is the same thing, but eroded. Yeah, he was. If we don't act, it erodes. If I don't act, it erodes me. I loved that. I thought it was a very poetic phrase.
Yeah. I really appreciated that word too. I think, unfortunately, I have learned to expect the empire to be violent. I grew up in a military family, and so I put a lot of hope into what we can do together as a community. Not just holding the pain, but actually doing something together. Knowing our neighbors. Julie was just talking about that recently and how that can make a difference in, not calling the police because we're, creating community in our neighborhoods and taking care of each other. But yes, that there are things we can do that help us work this justice out in real time, in real place, the kingdom of God here now. It doesn't make everything better, but I am comforted that there's something we can do. Thank you, Charles.
Yeah, it keeps us alive for the ongoing struggle of transformation. Just backing up a real sec. Rachel, why wouldn't you call the police? I don't know if everyone would think that.
Oh, because they're going to target the people of color.
Yeah,
I mean,
our faith in the police is, that's a very dangerous thing to do for the people involved in whatever for your neighbors.
And
maybe even for you. When you call the police, they might kill you, especially if you're black.
And they're not trained to respond to all the types of situations that they get called into. There's a website going around, I think, nationally, like for different cities of like, somebody shared it last night with me. I think it's like don'tcallthepolice.com or something. And it's a list of resources, like who to reach out to for mental health crises, who to reach out to for domestic violence, who to reach out to, because police aren't trained to respond to all of those things. And I think that's great, and I'm glad that resource exists. But that's where I was also talking about, like, knowing your neighbors, because knowing the names of your neighbors and fostering a sense of community and solidarity on your block, for example, for me, really does matter in not calling the police. People call when there's disruption, when there's when people don't feel safe, whatever. And it does help to have a community on your block where you can creatively respond to what's happening together as a way to intervene.
Because you call your neighbors, Julie, right?
I do.
You don't call 911. You just call the neighbors and say, "Hey, what's going on? What should we do?"
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's just going out front. It's just like, who's at home? Can we all just like be out on the front stoop right now because there's something I'm right across from the park, so there's always something happening over there. And just our presence on the block matters. It's a de-escalating factor when people don't realize there's more people around here paying attention. I'm not just alone in my own behavior or crises or whatever's happening. So there's action we can take that might sound small. Yes, we need, police reform or
abolition.
Abolition.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's that word? Thank you. And advocacy and all of that. But the little everyday steps that we take matter too.
And I think they matter to what Charles is saying about an eroded person. Because like if my sense of solidity, is dependent upon the giant gears of empire to change in the favor of justice, I don't know if I'll make it.
Yeah.
And so like it might seem small. I have air quotes right now. It might seem small, but it's not. It's not small to know your neighbors.
That's right.
It's actually hard. You have to work at it. How you have to plan to remember their name and be that kind of person that's gonna, instead of just have the hand wave neighbor, it's gonna at least be the hey Bill neighbor.
Yes.
Yeah.
That takes work.
I do love that we can hear each other at least in a row house on
in
a
South
city
Philly?
block. Oh my gosh. I'm always texting my neighbors, "Are you okay over there?" when I hear things. And I just love that ability.
Wait, you hear things and you text them, "Are you okay?"
Yes.
That's so wild, man.
Yo, I'm glad my neighbor does not text me, "Are you okay?"
When you're yelling at your kids or something.
Yeah, are you gonna murder those children like you just said?
Holding on to hope is crucial for me because I need hope to just reimagine how everything is done, and that hope comes from Jesus. I call it it's like end of the world hope, eschatological hope, right? And eschatological.
I never knew how to say that word, Johnny. So thank you. Say it again.
Eschatological, or you could say eschatological. You could say it
but then it sounds like bear scat too, which you know more about. So
Keep going, Johnny.
End of the world hope, what the kingdom of God will look like, the age to come. That informs my present action. Right when they announced that the verdict was coming on the Derek Chauvin trial, we heard helicopters moving towards Center City in Philadelphia, and I thought, what? Are they on my side? Are they going to protect me? What's happening? What is going on? And then we got the verdict, 3 counts. Guilty on 3 counts. Unbelievable. Feels like a miracle. And then my friends are saying, they're encouraged, but they're also discouraged because they think this is just a drop in the bucket. It's a small step. But I told them we have a vision for what's possible, which lets us see small glimpses of hope now. So on one hand, you could say changing the gears of the system seems overwhelming and beyond our capacity. I see it the other way. I have a vision for what's actually possible in the world, and so when little changes happen in the system, I'm encouraged. Because my thing is much bigger than your thing, you know? Like, your laws and your empire are small compared to my God's kingdom and what will come, you know?
Amen.
So yeah, of course that can change. Of course you can make the right decision, you know? And yeah, justice and accountability for killer police is a step. But it's not a complete step. It's not salvation. But my commitment to it and my imagination for it allows me to see it, even in small places.
Yeah. The breed of joy that we experienced yesterday when we heard that Chauvin was convicted was relief. Because we were all so scared that justice would not be served again.
Mm-hmm. Or accountability.
Because this isn't even actually justice,
right.
Because justice would be more holistic than this. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. But we were scared that not even accountability would be delivered.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that relief in the disaster, I think we do have to receive it. Mm-hmm. And that's a discipline too. To celebrate, even if we're not there yet, because we have a long way to go together, and we need to, not be eroded.
That's right.
And this is one of the ways we don't fall apart before we give the gifts we've been given.
I think that Christians then have a role to keep casting the vision of hope, keep saying, Christ was crucified and resurrected, and that totality of that, the completion of justice in that moment, the resurrection of Jesus, allows us to endure right now in the current struggle as we await his return.
Amen, Johnny. Thank you.
I'm so glad you're listening to our podcast, and if you want to talk back to us like we just did, email us at resistandrestorepodcast@circleofhope.net, and we'll be sure to put you on the air. We want to hear from you. We love hearing from you. If you have feedback about last week's episode with Andrew, we'd love to hear that, or this week's with Shane. That would be great. And keep following along with us. Pray with us at circleofhope.net/dailyprayer and /dailyprayerdeeper. They're designed for you to be discipled with us and journey with us, and also to listen to all sorts of different voices in Circle of Hope, praying in different ways and sharing thoughts and meditations in different ways. So be sure to use those. And we're still online during this pandemic at circleofhope.net/online meeting at 5 p.m. We still have a live stream of our at-home meeting, which you can enter into. And if you want to get connected to a cell, go to circleofhope.net/cells, and you can find one that's close to your neighborhood or still meeting online. And finally, share money with us. Go to circleofhope.net/sharing, and that will help this podcast and our whole church keep going, and it'll connect you with us in a unique way as well. And if you can't do that, and that's okay, please review this podcast highly wherever you listen to it. Be sure to subscribe to it and share it with others who you think would be blessed by it too. So I have my old friend Shane Claiborne here with us. Shane's been part of Circle of Hope for a long time, and he's inspired us, and I hope we've inspired him. I wanted to bring him onto our show because with Red Letter Christians, a group that he's part of, he's been talking a lot about Christian nationalism, and I think this is a subject that I hope our listening audience wants to hear about. I think they should want to hear about it, and Shane has some insight to share about it. So does that sound okay, Shane?
Let's do it, man. Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the big spiritual battles of our generation, this Christian nationalism that we're up against. So, yeah, it's good to talk about it.
So I want to start with this. January 6th. Can you tell us what you were thinking as you witnessed or heard about the attack on the Capitol? Like, what's going on in Shane's mind in this moment?
Wow. Well, I think we were all watching that with probably different emotions, different angles. Some people were absolutely surprised. Some were not surprised at all. I mean, I think the thing that really strikes me still as I watch some of the images are the mixing of the Jesus Saves flags and the Trump flags and even the Confederate flag, and so I think, it's like, which one of these is not like the others, but anyway, I mean, there it is. It's all laid out. And then, I mean, there's like a minute and a half video that we played, Johnny, that has the guy with the horns, in the Senate chamber.
The Q shaman, yeah.
Yeah, like, but praying, thank you, Lord, for, and we take America back, and like all, and in Jesus' name. And so that's one of the things that really did kind of stop me in my tracks is you hear a lot of like the conflation of God and guns and all kinds of things like that, but like actually bringing the sweet Lord Jesus into this Senate chamber.
I know. I couldn't believe it.
So, yeah. So, we immediately like responded by trying to, we started a petition, and a declaration that's got thousands of signatures, but and you're one of the signers. We felt like we needed to address this both as anti-democracy, but also anti-Christian.
Totally.
And that not just what manifests itself in January 6th, but the conditions, the theology that led to January 6th. So yeah, for me, this wasn't just like out of left field. This was something that we've been priming the pump for in the evangelical church. That's why it wasn't all that surprising.
So you think we've been priming the pump for it and in evangelicalism. How did Donald Trump prime the pump for this, you think? How did Donald Trump seize, in some ways, control of evangelicalism and birth this monster, really? How did that happen?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we all know that Trump is an opportunist. He saw the opportunity to really solidify his base among white evangelicals. And I think it is really important to differentiate between white evangelicals and other Christians, especially Christians of color who, black women have been the moral conscience of our country, and many of them are Christians. So that, like, as you look outside of white evangelicalism, you see a different landscape, But, like, We've been saying for the last few years under Trump that Donald Trump didn't change America; he revealed America, and the same is true of the evangelical church. He didn't change evangelicalism. He just surfaced some things that were maybe a little bit more subtle before he was president. But I think one of the things that he shows us is that there are a lot of white Christians that are shaped more by their whiteness than by their Christ, their fidelity to Christ. And that's why I think we ended up seeing a lot of people trying to hold together their loyalty to Jesus and their loyalty to Trump, even though they're like opposing magnets, you try to hold them together and they just can't quite make it.
What does it mean? I think you said they're more loyal to their whiteness. What does whiteness mean? And what does it mean to be loyal to it? What do you think about that?
Well, I think that there is a version of American nationalism that's trying to camouflage itself as Christianity, but it actually doesn't look much like Jesus, right? And that's what we really believe is that Christian means Christ-like.
Right.
So I think one of our dangers in America is this nationalism that when it's literally taking the Lord's name in vain.
Totally.
When you put in God we trust on money, and our economy looks like the 7 deadly sins. When we say like God bless America, and America isn't blessing the people that Jesus blessed.
Totally.
So I think there's this danger of inoculation, right? Where you you get a watered down version of the virus and it knocks it out of you. I think with Christianity, there's sort of this watered down version of American nationalism that people are rejecting. And rightly so. But it's, so I think that's some of what surfaced under Donald Trump, because it's not a Christ-like Christianity. It's this sort of a mythology of America that was on this full display on January 6th. And that's what, Eddie Glaude and so many other folks have named, like, America is not unique in its evils. Where America is unique is in the mythology that we have created to justify those evils. And actually, we've never really reckoned with the evils of our past. We've just created a narrative with theology, manifest destiny.
Yeah, we're on Lenape land now, you and I.
Yeah, doctrine of discovery, like all of these things, this American exceptionalism. And that's what I think is at war with some of the more authentic Christianity.
So this was something that troubled me. I've long been critical of the United States, but I'm watching the Capitol get invaded, and I think to myself, wow, this is actually affecting perhaps a good institution in the United States, peaceful transfer of power, democracy. How does a Christian who says Jesus is Lord engage with the idea that our democracy could be damaged by Christians? Because we don't put our hope in democracy, but when we see it damaged, we actually have a response. How do you work that out for people that want to put their faith in really the political consequence of the gospel, but see that democracy is being attacked? How do those two things work together? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so this is one of those places where, Jesus said we're to be as shrewd as serpents and as innocent as doves. And I think it's one of those places where when it comes to the Christian's posture and relationship to state power, we have a natural suspicion, and we should, about state power. We worship an executed and risen Savior. So I think like there's this sort of suspicion of state power that is healthy. I've been arrested at the Capitol many times for nonviolent, civil disobedience, but that's where we like that commitment to nonviolence is so important. And the right to protest is so important, even to go to jail for putting our bodies in the way of what we believe is injustice. But truth is also important. And that, Jesus said the truth shall set you free. And I think the lies are holding us hostage. The lies that, the QAnon, the conspiracy groups, all this, the election was stolen, all this stuff. So no matter where we are on the political continuum, we should believe in truth. And we should believe, I think, as Christians, in nonviolence. So when you're a part of a violent act, like what happened on January 6th, every Christian should tap out and be like, no, this is not anything I want to be a part of. Yeah. Especially when officers are being killed and people's lives are being threatened, and even the rhetoric that led up to that. And I think that's why, between the rhetoric of Trump and the gospel of Jesus, you
totally.
see this really stark contrast. So, yeah.
So we had a podcast episode right after the insurrection. We asked, was it a Christian insurrection? Do you think that this was a Christian nationalist insurrection?
Well, this is exactly why we felt the need to call this a heresy, right? To really name it for what it is. And in our declaration that you signed, we said, over for centuries, the church has felt a need to address heretical versions, distortions, perversions of their faith, right? And they've done that in different ways in councils at Nicaea and things like that. But we really felt the need to gather and say this. We need to name this as a heretical version of our faith. So I think that it definitely was wearing the full attire of Christianity, but that's where I would say it's masquerading, or it's camouflaging itself as Christianity, because it's not any version that looks like Jesus or that would pass the litmus test of Christian orthodoxy. And that's why I think what happened on January 6th was a threat to democracy, but was also a threat to Orthodox Christianity. Like there's no way that a Christian can defend what happened on January 6th.
You talked previously about white evangelicalism. Do you think that Christian nationalism is unique compared to white evangelicalism or the typical religious right evangelicalism? Is this a new phenomena that we're facing now? Or is it really what we've been working with, since Reagan, since Bush, and so on?
Yeah, well, even further than that, right? You look at Frederick Douglass and when he talks about the Christianity of this land, America, and the Christianity of Christ, right? And he says, I see the widest possible difference. I love the Christianity of Christ. I therefore reject and hate the women whipping, cradle plundering, slave holding Christianity of this land, right? So I think he named that, and people have named that in different ways throughout history. But there is, I think there's a moment in our country right now that we're having to reckon with who we are, right? And the particular Christian flavor of this nationalism is on full display. But what's happened is that and this is why race is so tied up in it, is that all of this is coming on the back of the Black Lives Matter movement, the first black president under Obama. And then you see this, white lash, it's often called, right? Like this blowback of white supremacy. And so white folks that have always held the power are looking at the changing demographics of Congress and of America. And there's, what's been named as white fragility, white fear. I think even a white nostalgia, right, of how things used to be. So take America back, make America great again. To many people means make America white again. And there really is this clutch for a white America. I think there's a lot of versions that are more subtle than what we saw on January 6th, but there's people that would be very uncomfortable with those changing demographics, even on Fox News and stuff. You hear this, they're replacing us, but I think that what really is happening is there is this movement in our country that, and it has everything to do with fear. And so, I really think that a beautiful scripture for us today is that the one that says perfect love casteth out fear, because I think love and fear are really at war in our country. And we saw that, we saw that kind of armed fear on full display.
I experienced that sort of fear right after 9/11 myself as an Arab American in the United States. And then it happened again. Just the hostility towards the stranger and towards the other and towards the immigrant. I felt that within me, and it's extremely painful, but also formative to experience that. So I appreciate you bringing light to that. I'm going to ask you a pointed question here. Do you think Jerry Falwell Jr. and Franklin Graham are Christian nationalists?
Wow. Well, I certainly believe that they. I guess I do my best not to judge others, as whether their authenticity of their faith. But I also think, a tree is known by its fruit. And if in the end, Jerry Falwell says, as he did, that Donald Trump is the dream president, right? And Franklin Graham said, and I heard these over and over to make sure I didn't misquote them. Franklin Graham said that God intervened in the last election to help Donald Trump become president. So I think when that theology is a theology of Trump rather than a theology centered around Jesus, we're certainly in trouble. And it's no new thing, that folks have. But Jesus himself said you can't serve two masters. So I think there kind of comes a point where you can't hold together the Sermon on the Mount and the rhetoric and policies of Donald Trump.
Totally.
And they chose, and some would say that they chose because of political, they forfeited their credibility and moral authority for the sake of political expediency and, literally sold out some of their deepest held values for 2 or 3 seats on the Supreme Court. So, but it really is as if, we've never read the gospel where it says, what good is it to gain the whole world and lose your soul? They didn't even gain the whole world. They got some judges, and you're like, man, whew. Yeah, so
that's a lot of sacrifice. Yeah.
Yeah. Judas, sold Jesus out for a kiss for a few pieces of silver. And I think we're susceptible to that same temptation for sure.
What do you think the danger is that Christian nationalism poses to Christianity and to our churches? A recent study came out that said church attendance in the United States is below 50% for the first time. Does Christian nationalism affect that?
Absolutely, it affects that. You can't have some of the most vocal leaders within the evangelical movement defending things that are indefensible and it not have some ripples, of the credibility of that faith. So just as, we've seen like folks that profess to be Muslim that have distorted their faith for hatred, for violent acts, like on September 11th, like extremism does a tremendous damage to the folks that really hold to the heart of our faith. So that's why, I was really encouraged to see a whole movement around the globe of Muslims against extremism and against ISIS. And I think in some ways we need Christians who are standing against the extremist versions of Christian nationalism, and kind of naming that what it is. So what one of the studies showed recently, Jonny, was that it's common that young people that grew up in the church leave the church in their 20s. Some of that's because they go to college and things like that,
sure.
And they've never bumped into Circle of Hope or whatever, but they're leaving. What was interesting and revealed in this latest study is the reason that they are leaving is not just because they went to college or kind of picked up their root, grew roots somewhere else, but they actually are leaving because of politics and because of social justice, that the evangelical church that raised them is kind of on the wrong side of many of these issues around race and nationalism. So I think that should show us something, right? Even for folks that consider themselves evangelical Christians that want people to know Jesus, that this kind of Trump evangelicalism has done tremendous damage to that. And there are people that reject a version of Christianity, but it's a version of Christianity that ironically has deserted Jesus.
That's right.
And so I say to a lot of people, leaving Trump evangelicalism may not be the end of your faith. That may be the beginning of a more robust and better and more beautiful faith. So that's the thing that I would invite people that are listening in to think about, is rejecting this narrative of the toxic white evangelicalism, to just not see anything else on the spiritual landscape still allows us, that narrative, to colonize all of Christianity. And so I would invite folks that are leaving those predominantly white circles of sort of toxic evangelicalism to see that there's all kinds of other really, really beautiful stuff happening in the church. And I mean, the Black Church series, on PBS was wonderful. I think a lot of what we're trying to do at Circle of Hope and other movements like it, Red Letter Christians, is to reclaim a Christianity that is centered around Jesus. And that becomes really important, because the best corrective to what's gone wrong in evangelicalism is Jesus.
That's right.
I really believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. What should pastors do if they have Christian nationalists in their church? Worshiping with them at the communion table. How do you, I know a lot of pastors, and honestly, Circle doesn't really attract many of them, so we haven't had too much trouble with that. But you have pastors all over the country that have churches that have Christian nationalists in them. What do you think they should do? How do they approach it?
Yeah, so I think that we have to begin to challenge this on a lot of different levels. And one of them is through our teaching and preaching and our Bible studies and curriculum. And because the solution to bad theology is not no theology, but it's good theology, right? And I think that one of the things that we can challenge is just this idea. I see it all through Jesus' teaching that we're to be born again. When his mother and brothers come, he says, "Who are my mother and brothers but those that are, about the reign of God and the work of the kingdom?" And so he's kind of inviting us to think beyond biology. And I think that's the challenge of nationalism, is that a love for our own people is a good thing, but our love doesn't stop at the border, and who our own people is changes when you believe that you are born again. That now if someone's suffering on the other side of the border wall, it's as tragic as if it were our own mother or daughter or son. Mother Teresa had a way of saying that sometimes our biggest problem is that the circle we draw around our family is too small. And that's exactly what Jesus is doing, I think, is blowing those, little circles that we put around our family away. And whether it's biology, redefining what family is to us beyond biology, beyond nationalism. So, America first is a theological heresy. And I think we've got to do better theology to say, the Bible says, it doesn't say God bless America. It said God so loved the world. We're to love that big. So I think we've got to do that. And then I think we've got to get underneath these fears, because there are a reason that people feel fear, and we've got to address some of that. The good news is I think that we've got facts on our side. The fears that we have are unsubstantiated. They're irrational, right? The Cato Institute named a dozen things that are more likely to kill you than an immigrant or refugee. And there were things like cows falling down the stairs, more likely to kill you than a refugee. A roller coaster, lightning, a vending machine falling on you is more likely to kill you. So I think we've got to really challenge the way that we are socialized and conditioned to fear other people, especially as white folks. So, and proximity makes all the difference on this too. I think sometimes we fear people because we don't know them, and so it's not just teaching that's going to change this. I think that we also need our congregations to be immersed in communities that are not homogenous, because we kind of hide behind in these bubbles of, sameness that allow us to reinforce these stereotypes or fears or prejudices that we have, especially as white folks. It's a lot easier to hide for us.
Can you talk about, because you were talking about refugees here, and I need to mention this, I think this is going to change, but the other day, the Biden administration, we have a new president now, said he wasn't going to increase the refugee admissions cap. In 2016, the United States led the world in refugee admissions. And now he's keeping the same Trump cap. I believe he committed to changing that. But I think what we see there is even a new president doesn't change the sort of xenophobia and fear that you're talking about, because ordinary Americans still poll overwhelmingly opposed to bringing in vulnerable groups like refugees. What do we do with that? That it seems like our political apparatus doesn't give us the kind of Christian generosity and hospitality that we need in this country and in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where Christians have to be. Just as we are politically engaged and socially conscious, we also need to be radically nonpartisan. And I'm very disappointed in the current administration under Biden when it comes to refugees and several other things. I got a little list, but now we've got people on the inside that are trying to communicate those. So, when he said that he's going to cap off, the refugee ceiling, and then, it was faith communities that rose up, folks like World Relief, Jenny Yang, Matthew Sorens, and others that said, no, this is not, like, welcoming refugees is not a Republican thing or a Democrat thing. This is a Jesus thing, and we care about this.
Absolutely.
And interestingly enough, some of our highest numbers of refugees coming into the country have been under Republican presidents, and the lowest were under Donald Trump, and now possibly even lower under Biden. We may, unless this changes, we could see the lowest numbers of refugees of any modern presidency under Biden. So I think that should concern all of us who follow Jesus, who said, when you welcome the stranger, you welcome me. When you don't welcome them, you don't welcome me. So, if kids are in camps and cages at the border under Biden, it's just as tragic as when they were there under Trump. So the border crisis, I think I see a little bit of light and change happening there. But when it comes to refugees being admitted, we still have this horrible lack of commitment right now at the federal level.
It seems like a grossly political move to me, and that's painful that you would try to preserve political points at the expense of the least of these. And so I'm praying for a change there, and I hope that it'll happen. And I and maybe this is naive of me, but I think that, with enough pressure, Biden might be compelled to change. And because I do think a lot of Christians are talking to him, and I think he has an ear to some faithful Christians. Specifically, yeah. Do you see any hope in the future for American Christianity? I mean, it's really been tarnished for a long time. You know, I tell people this story all the time. I became a part of Circle of Hope because of our vocal opposition to the war in Iraq, and I needed a people because it was very popular with everybody, and especially evangelicals. And I needed an alternative to that, and I found it here. But and the war in Afghanistan is just ending now, so a whole generation of people have experienced this forever war. My question then is, when it seems like the most public Christians, as we've said, have really damaged the faith, do you have hope then for the future of American Christianity? Can we keep planting seeds in American soil and hope that Christian faith grows from them? Or is the soil too hard, or is it filled with rocks, or are the weeds going to choke out those seeds?
Yeah, I mean, I like that old hymn, my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. All other ground is sinking sand. I really think that one of the great miracles of our faith is that Jesus has survived the embarrassing and shameful things that Christians have done in his name. And I look at the historic black church. I look at the church in so many different cultures, indigenous Christians, folks that are in different spaces that have been historically marginalized and even hurt by the dominant, kind of powers that be, and white evangelicalism being one of those. Like I look at that and I go, man, we've got to lean into that past, and we've got to really see that, part of getting our future right is getting our past right and seeing the mistakes that we've made, the more than mistakes, the evils that we've justified and perpetuated as white Christians. So yeah, I mean, I'm very, I wouldn't say optimistic. I'm hopeful because I see those remnants. There's always been a remnant, and Christians are at their best when they are a counterculture, when there's a contrast, there's resistance or struggle. As Stanley Hauerwas says, Christians are meant to be like air fresheners in the bathroom, like we're meant to leave off the fragrance of Jesus in a pretty dark world. So if we believe light shines in darkness, this is a really great moment. The other thing that gives me like some realistic reason to hope is that I think some of the most toxic versions of evangelicalism are aging out. And there are new things that are kind of birthing out of the compost of Christendom, but I look at like the Trump evangelicalism and the televangelists and some of that has been so toxic, I think, is aging a little bit. Now, there are some very important exceptions to that. Some young voices, the Eric Metaxas and things that are charismatic, dangerous.
Has Eric blocked you on Twitter yet, Shane?
Probably, I would think so. But we've had a number of attempts to reach out to folks like that. I've reached out to Franklin Graham and Jerry Falwell and Robert Jeffress to see if they would have a conversation around how centering Jesus, informs how they're thinking about these social and political issues. So so what's very clear to me is that some of the loudest, most public voices have been some of the most toxic voices. And yet I think what's changing is that there's a beautiful harmony of folks that are committed to Jesus and care about justice. Just this week we had a forum on immigration with Alexia Salvatierra and Jenny Yang. I think, on the Red Letter Christians website, we've got a couple hundred different leaders that are, holding together Jesus and justice and addressing things like, police violence and immigration and those sorts of things. So I'm really encouraged by all that.
So we can go to Red Letter Christians, your website, and find Christian leaders that we should be listening to. Will you give us the URL to that?
Yeah, that's one of the most important things we've done at Red Letter Christians is try to change the narrative by changing the narrators, right? By amplifying different leaders that are out there. So and we always say that we're a web of subversive friends. So there's a new part of our website that's musicians and artists. There's a site that's pastors. Or a part of the site. There's a part that's, different authors and speakers and stuff. So all of that, like we say we're trying to harmonize but not homogenize, because we
That's
want
great.
a really diverse group, but we want to be singing the song of Jesus and justice. So it's redletterchristians.org, and there's a place where you can sign up, and we'll stay in touch, and we have all kinds of stuff going on these days.
And we'll have that in our show notes for y'all too. So before we end, I want to ask, who has been inspiring you lately? Who should we look to? Who's been filling Shane up?
Well, I love Circle of Hope. Of course, it's been a real lifeline for me, for a couple decades. So, and then, there's folks all over the country that I love collaborating with, Reverend Barber down in North Carolina, Tracy Blackman. I mean, in Philly, Leslie Callahan, Mark Tyler, there's all kinds of folks that are organizing nationally, the PICO network, that, Faith in Action, Live Free campaign, Power Interfaith in Philly. So there's so much, even the, New Sanctuary movement, the whole movement around our country for compassion and hospitality to immigrants. And so, I guess it's like Jesus said, the wheat and the weeds are all growing together. And sometimes it just feels to me like someone spilled fertilizer on the whole garden, so it's all right now just going nuts, the good and the ugly. But it's an amazing time to be alive right now, though. I heard someone say, if you're wondering what you would have been doing in the civil rights movement when Dr. King was alive, just look at what you're doing now. That's what you would have been doing then.
Very good, very good.
Watching it on TV or going to jail in the streets, whatever. Yeah. So
how can we find you and follow your work? What are some places on the internet particularly that we can follow you?
Yeah, well, I'm on Twitter and Facebook. It's just my name, Shane Claiborne, and I'm newly on Instagram. Thanks to our friend Kristen Snow, introduced me to Instagram and helps out on a lot of.
We love Kristen Snow.
Yeah, she's awesome. So she's helping with a lot of the organizing of Red Letter Christians this day, and these days, and kind of bridges the Circle of Hope and RLC world for me. But so I'm on all the socials, and we've got like stuff we're doing every month. We're going to do a big Pentecost party and Pentecost celebrating the birthday of the church. We've got a book club we're doing every month. So there's, not a dull moment. So yeah.
Are you working on anything new that we should look forward to? Any books or articles coming out?
Yeah, I guess everybody listening can't see my fly fishing rod behind me, but I'm sitting in a little lovely chair writing a book right now in Tennessee. And I grew up here in East Tennessee, so I like to write from here sometimes. So I'm writing a book on, it's actually on a more robust ethic of life, right? To be pro-life, not just in terms of abortion or one issue, but to see, every person made in the image of God. So, I'm writing a book about life right now, connecting the dots on some of those issues.
When do you think it'll be out?
Next year.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I don't know when exactly, but yeah, so... but that's what I'm up to right now. And, yeah.
Excellent, Shane. Thanks so much for being on our show. It's good to hear from you. Good to hear your perspective. And I like being a co-conspirator alongside of you here. Yeah,
I love it, man. Me too. It's good to talk to you. And thanks for hosting these conversations. I think we've got to be talking about things like Christian nationalism. They're one of the biggest dangers to our faith right now.
Totally.
Cool.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, buddy.
We like to end our podcast with some spiritual show and tell. We want to share with you what's been nourishing to our souls, hopefully so that it can nourish yours too. So, pastors, what do you have to share this week?
I'm ready.
Great.
I'm showing you the cover, but this is a podcast, so they can't see it. But it's Godric by Frederick Buechner. It's this weird poetic book. I don't even know when was it written. Let me look that up.
Is that a picture of Ireland at the top there?
It's probably, I think he's English, but it's like a long time ago. It was published in 1980, but it's like about the Middle Ages. And this weird hermit telling his life story. And my brother gave it to me years ago, but we were talking about it again, and he convinced me to start reading it. It is such a beautiful book. Even it's just beautifully written. Like it's it's like half rhyming all the time, which you know I would love. And I'm just going to read you one little quote that I thought was particularly beautiful and kind of self-contained. And I texted it to my brother, and he called me, and I didn't answer my phone, so he called my wife because this quote is kind of so metal that he was worried about me.
Oh gosh, now we have to hear it.
It's just a little, it's a little dark. But I basically just thought it was true and beautiful, and if it freaks you out, I'm sorry. So he was just in his grave. They had carved out a stone sepulcher for him in the hill because he's 100 years old and he's getting ready to die. And he's telling the story about this. And he got inside to see if he fit.
Oh my word.
It's a weird book like that, okay? And then the guy who was with him, the younger monk, said, he also said we should carve in the year and place where I was born. But I said no. And this is the quote that I really liked. As a man dies many times before he's dead, so does he wend from birth to birth until by grace he comes alive at last.
Oh, by grace. So good, Ben.
Put that in the show notes, that quote, okay?
All right.
And I by the way, I would just love to see the books that you and all your brothers own. If I could put them all together, I bet they would be just an amazing library. You and your brothers.
There's a lot of books.
My show and tell is a book too. Well, actually, a lot of Howard Thurman wrote a lot of books, and the more of them that I check out, just the more grateful I am for this man and his faith. So he's been really feeding my soul this week. A lot about like the immediacy of God, and he keeps kind of coming back to the center in this relationship with Jesus, this direct experience, and he meditates there, and it seems to fuel this faith in like the deep personal worth of all of humanity, of every human being, and of our capacity for community and our need for social action. It all flows out of this relationship with God. And so I'm just very grateful for Howard Thurman again this week.
What's the specific book this week?
With Head and Heart.
With Head and Heart, cool.
You had a really good quote from that book that you shared with me earlier. I thought you were going to read it now.
I'll put it in the show notes. How about that?
Okay, you don't have it ready. That's fine. Cute. Draw more people to look for it. That's good. I'll go a totally different direction. I feel like I always talk about nature and things outside, but it does nourish my soul. And we haven't, we took a little break from this podcast, so...
I love whatever you're going to say. Don't worry about it.
Okay, good.
I go outdoors via you. It's good.
Yeah, I look at the
he doesn't
plant
even have to go outside because you go outside for him.
And I bought him a plant.
Yeah,
so
I'm looking at that plant right now.
Wait, by the way, my plant is not doing that great, and I'm doing everything you said. You have to tell me more. I need help. I need a plant doctor.
Well, I don't know if I'm the plant doctor, but I'll see if I can help. I actually want to talk about those plants. I bought myself and the pastors prayer plants. They're called prayer plants, and there's different varieties of them. But I've never owned them before, and when I learned their name, I was like, well, we should all have them. And my prayer plant is just constantly putting out new leaves. I can't even believe how much it's growing. And it is so fun to watch because the leaves unfurl like a straw. You can see at the end of the branch the new one poking out, and then it just slowly unfurls like a straw, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then the hand unfolds. And it's called a prayer plant because the leaves close up at night like hands folding, and then in the sunlight they open up again. So it's been really fun for me to literally just like check on this plant every day. And in contrast, I have another plant, and its name is escaping me at the moment, but it had a new leaf too that has been unfurling for over a month.
One leaf.
Just one leaf. And I keep watching it like, what's wrong with this plant? Why is it not, come on, you're almost there, and so it's such a contrast, and they're right next to each other. It's such a contrast to see how they grow and, my anticipation of what's coming next. And I'm not even going to try to make a beautiful metaphor of it because...
but it's so there. It's so teed up.
It is, because it's our prayers.
Right.
It's a symbol of our prayers.
Yep. And sometimes you can see it unfolding, and other times you wait. You wait in anticipation, not knowing what's coming. But
You did it. That was it. There's probably like 9 other good applications of that image.
Totally. Jonny, how about you? What's nourishing your soul this week?
A new pasta shape called cascatelli. Have you heard about this?
No.
Yes, because you told me about it.
This is really great. Okay.
As soon as it came out.
Dan Pashman's Porkful podcast, it's slightly a bigger podcast than ours. And
slightly.
He has this 5-episode series called Mission Impossible, which is funny on its own. And he chronicles how, over the last 3 years, he develops a new pasta shape. And it is fascinating to journey with him and his family as they go over this. At some point his daughter says, what if it does get to the stores but no one buys it because they don't even know who you are? And I loved that moment of just the cold hard truth from the kid. But what nourished my soul about this is he actually worked it out. He disciplined himself to make something that was seemingly impossible to invent a new pasta shape, and he did. Now, the features of this pasta are 3. It is sauceable, so it's almost like a self-stuffing pasta. It takes the sauce in a unique way. It's
got like a lot of folds in it to catch the sauce.
And it has a valley. Cascatelli, it comes from the Italian word for waterfalls, and so it's kind of shaped like a waterfall. And then it's forkable, so you can really get it with a fork nicely. And then it has tooth syncability, and so it has a dynamic contrast, and so it's kind of it has a texture to it because of how it's shaped. And the whole podcast is interesting because it tells you about the process. But what I loved is that he pulled it off. He applied himself and he made something happening. So there's a piece of eschatological hope in that too, that something can be done, that you can do something and you can apply yourself to fulfill a little vision of heaven, which I'm now imagining is full of pasta. But
yes, it
but
is.
It could be
and waterfalls.
Exactly. Well, there you go. So. Cascatelli pasta by the Sporkful. That's what's nourishing my soul this week.
Wow. It's nourishing my stomach too. Thank you, Jonny.
It sounds delicious.
I'll have to make it for you guys sometime. That's our show, y'all. Glad to be together. I hope you felt nourished by it. I hope you felt blessed by it. And again, share it around. We want more people to connect to our community in this way. See you next time.